Serious, job applicants who walked out of an interview before it was over. Why did you do it? I walked out of an interview before it began once. The interview was scheduled for 10 AM, which I double checked from the voicemail that they left. I showed up about 10 minutes early, signed in, all that jazz, and waited. And waited. And waited. 45 minutes later I got up, asked the receptionist, who looked seriously embarrassed, to let my interviewer know I was no longer interested, and left. 2 hours later I got a rude call asking if I had forgotten the appointment. I laughed and hung up. I had the opposite experience. Talked to a guy over the phone about a general labor job. He told me to be at his shop at 6:30. He said he was very strict about time, so I was there at 6:15 just to be sure. Get there the following day and proceed to be screamed the duck out for not being there at 6 o'clock. I tried to be polite and say I must have misheard even though I've never been so sure about something someone has said, but he insisted I was wrong and that I get out. Can't help but feel I'm better off not having him as an employer. I walked out on an interview only once, and it was because the people organizing it were insane. They had arranged a large-scale interviewing process for the entire city. After getting there early I realized there were quite a few applicants, so I didn't mind the fact that I had to wait for about 3 hours. Eventually they asked a group of 3 of us into an office where we waited again for about 45 minutes. Again I was happy just to have an interview, so I waited. Eventually I met with a manager for the store who asked the standard range of questions, and I thought I did pretty well. At the end of the interview though I was asked to sign a waiver, and when I asked why I found out that they had recorded the entire interview for the purpose of an episode of A Current Affairs and didn't tell me beforehand. After waiting for so long just to be disrespected like that I just walked out. I happened to catch the episode later and it featured some of the people who I had waited with in the room. Thank God I didn't sign that waiver, because the angle of the investigation was that unemployed people didn't put any effort into getting jobs, completely ignoring the fact that everyone had to wait 4 hours just to get a chance. TLDR, got hidden cammed at a job interview for a TV show. I accidentally walked out on an interview. I had driven 4 hours to apply for a bar/gaming room job in preparation for moving cities for study. I had purchased an apartment, so I kinda had to take job searching seriously. I had spent about 20 minutes talking to the gaming manager, during which time the venue manager joined us, when some guy came up to them and started chatting to them. I sat there for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, wondering if the interview was over, when I decided that most questions had been asked and my existence had barely been acknowledged since the guy had rocked up. I half interrupted, shook one of the interviewer's hands and said thanks, and exited the premises with no idea how the interview went. Was crossing the road to my car, when one of the interviewers chased me across the road and offered me the position. Turns out the guy interrupting the interview was one of the owners of the venue. I sometimes wonder how I get through life considering how socially inept I can be. I went into the interview with my prospective supervisor. I looked around the office and noticed that the garbage cans were full, the walls and carpet dirty, and the supervisor's desk was old and had chips out of it. So I mentioned that the company didn't seem to be doing any basic upkeep and then asked point blank, "Is this a good company to work for?" She replied no and hung her head. I said thanks and walked out. The job was advertised as morning shift. The interviewer starts to explain how I would be used as a wild card to fill any shift that was needed, including short notice. Edit. Got another one. Went a job interview for a listing listed as job at a huge high-tech firm on the West Coast. All it was a recruiter scouting for people. There was no interviews with any company, he just wanted to build my profile. He explained that if he found me a job I would be an employee of his for 2 years before I would be an employee for the actual company. I wanted to bail then, but as soon as he said I wouldn't have any benefits and minimum wage, I noped the duck out. Got up, grabbed my coat. I was shaking my head while putting on my coat, and as I was walking out he said, "I'll just put you down as a lost cause. I am familiar with headhunters and was working with 2 other headhunters at that time. His terms were just straight robbery." I had placed my resume on a few job sites and accidentally left my resume open to the public. You should not do that. I had gotten a call for an interview for an insurance thing. I was young and lacked common sense, so I excitedly went. When I got there was about 20 other people waiting to be interviewed. Turned out to be a group interview where some handsome bleached teeth dude talked about how great the job was, where we could set our own hours and make as much money we wanted. All we had to do was pay a lot of money for their special training, and riches beyond our wildest dreams would come of it. Somehow the stupid slapped me in the face and I got up from my chair and started to walk out. The con man asked me where I was going, and I calmly said, "This is a scam, and I advise others to walk out too." 2 others left with me. I find it sad that only 2 others walked out. I was told about 40 minutes into an interview that the job I was interviewing for was going to be a 11 PM to 6 AM position. This had never been mentioned in the original job posting, or in the preliminary call prior to the interview. This wasn't for a gas station job or anything either. High profile law firm who basically needed a graphic designer to put together presentation materials overnight for use the following day. They also set it so that I'd be working hours just barely under the limit to qualify as a full-time employee with benefits. Again, none of this was ever mentioned in the job description up to this point. The last straw was that they gave me a 30-minute test to prove I could work on a deadline, based on the actual materials I'd be working with: chicken scratch, post-it notes, unintelligible audio recordings, and other horrible sources I had to base my designs on. I walked out of the test about 5 minutes in. Yeah, duck people like this. I expect you to do A-lead level work for part-time pay, shitty hours and no benefits. If you want good people, you generally have to pay them. Are you deciding to have any kids soon? We'd rather not hire you than have to fire you when you're knocked up. I was 15 at the time. Another time, I was around the same age. I was being interviewed for a babysitting job. All of a sudden she hands me a sheet of chores, including making dinner and being a waitress for the parents, cleaning the chimney and gutters. Laundry had to be washed, folded, and put away, cleaning toilets, and times every room had to be vacuumed. She then said that the kid would be on daycare so I'd have plenty of privacy. I just left. Too many leading questions, not stuff that would be illegal, but would get the same responses. So how do you spend your weekends? What's your Sunday morning look like? Sunday morning? I like to wake up early, have some coffee, make a healthy breakfast for myself and the people I love. Then I put on some nice clothes and go to my lawyer's office. We like to discuss the various places I have interviewed and been asked by the interviewer about my religious beliefs. I recently went to an interview for a bank in my area. First, the woman I spoke to on the phone misrepresented herself. She'd told me she was the assistant branch manager. Upon arrival, she told me she was head teller. The branch manager would be arriving shortly. I waited for an hour. After an hour of me double checking the time and wondering if I'd gotten there instead of early, I got up to leave. The head teller said she'd be there in 5 minutes, but at that point I just figured I obviously wasn't important enough. I left. I got a call back 3 days later apologizing and asking if they could set up another meeting at a bank I was nowhere near. I politely declined. Just after I had been given 3 months notice of layoff due to office closure from a job that I really liked, I took off early one day for an interview across town. When I arrived, I entered a waiting room full of people at least twice my age, in suits, resumes in hand. Upon seeing this sight, I realized I had very little chance at the position being offered, but since I was there I may as well try. What I didn't expect is that we were all scheduled to interview together. We were all herded into a conference room, where the group interview commenced. After a few rounds of questions, learning each other's qualifications, how we would handle various situations, and so on, we collectively learned that this position was part-time, not what had been advertised, and paid a mere $9 an hour. I walked out along with 3 other people. I never got as far as the interview. So much was wrong. I received a call asking me about my availability to attend an interview, based on my posting on a professional website. I indicated that I was currently in the middle of a project, but would be available to interview in 2 weeks. The woman on the phone yelled, "Then call me back when you are available." Click. She called me. She yelled at me. I wrote that company off. 2 days later she called me again and asked to set up the interview. She said she would call me as soon as she had finished a meeting. You called me. Then you tell me you don't have time to finish the conversation that you initiated. Wrote her and her entire corporation off. Get a phone call 3 hours later. So and so wants you to call her to schedule an interview on Monday. I definitely no longer want this job, but I do want to see if my predictions come true. I call on Monday. The person who answered the phone told me that it was the woman caller's day off. I am a genius. They call me and give me the runaround. What the duck? 2 weeks later, yesterday, they call me again. Again a person asks me to call at a later date to schedule an interview with a woman who couldn't bother to call me herself. I told them that based on their behavior in the past month on the phone, that I did not have any desire to work for their company. I broke my own code and fired off an email to their director of human resources. This company is a luxury retirement community. There are golf courses, hospitals, clinics, 4 to 6 bedroom homes, clubhouses, townhomes, etc. It seemed like it might be a lovely place to work in my field. If they would treat me in such an unprofessional manner, how must they treat the residents of the community? There were 3 total callers involved. I can only imagine the motives for calling someone, asking for an interview and then behaving in such a strange fashion. Nope. 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 The man interviewing me asked me if I was planning on getting married in the near future, and if so, would I think of having children immediately? Idiotic. A male acquaintance of mine was up for the same job. Obviously, he never got asked that. Sure, men don't leave work when their wives are pregnant, but even so. Pretty sure that's illegal in some countries, right? Yes, it's very illegal for potential employers to ask you anything about your personal or family life. Having kids and whether or not you're married fall under that criteria. Some aren't even allowed to ask you for your exact age. Edit, referring to the United States. Them. We have a very dedicated team. We often stay after normal office hours. Is that okay with you? Me. Sure. I mean I'm single without kids. So if it's adequately compensated I'm happy to do as much overtime as necessary, no problem. Them, oh no. We're passionate about the work we do here, so overtime is not paid. Me, okay then. Thank you for your time and goodbye. I graduated in 2009 with a degree in print journalism, and after a summer of doing random retail stuff, I decided to find a real job. I see a job posting for a marketing specialist, with emphasis in graphic design work. I brought my portfolio, and they told me they were impressed, and that I would get to do some design, writing, and editing. They said they represented big time companies, so 22-year-old me was incredibly excited. They told me to come back the next day for a job shadow, dressed professionally. I showed up bright and early in my nicest business clothes and heels, and they told me I would be riding with this red-headed girl. Side note, she started where I wound up working a few years later and didn't make it through training. I live on the north side of my city, and we drove all the way south to a residential neighborhood. I wasn't 100% sure what was going on, but they gave me a catalog and said we would be doing door-to-door sales for Sears Home Improvement. I made it 2 hours in the Midwest humidity, dealing with pissed off homeowners who didn't want to have their homes improved by Sears. While walking onto a driveway, my foot got caught in rabbit hole and I felt a snap. I couldn't put any weight on it, and told red-headed girl I needed to go. She panicked, saying she needed to meet her quota for the day. I asked if we could take an early lunch, so we went to Arby's, where she and the rest of the sales crew left me with a swollen foot. I had to call my dad to pick me up. He worked an hour and a half away. He dropped me off at my car, and I drove with my injured right foot home. Yeah, that helped. Nope. I went to urgent care, and discovered I had an avulsion fracture on the top of my foot. Yes, it was Matrix Resources. Stupid.